have you navigated the profound storms of a spiritual awakening? The dark nights, the ego deaths, the cosmic downloads? What if the turmoil has finally passed, not to leave you in quiet peace, but to usher you into your true power? The seeker's journey is complete. The chosen one phase is over. This is your call to action. We will reveal the 7 definitive signs that your preparation is finished, and it is now time to actively wield your gifts. The journey of spiritual awakening is often portrayed as the ultimate destination. But what comes after the visions fade and the internal chaos settles? Many are left wondering if they've reached the end. The truth is, the awakening was never the goal. It was merely the arduous, necessary training. You have been tempered in the fires of profound transformation. Now, you stand at the threshold, equipped and ready. Recognizing these 7 signs confirms the student has become the sovereign, and it is your time to build, lead, and manifest. The initial phase of spiritual emergence is often characterized by a powerful upward thrust, a yearning to transcend the mundane and touch the divine. This is a necessary ascent, a reaching for the light. However, this very movement can create an unconscious schism within the psyche. In the fervent pursuit of what is perceived as holy, enlightened, or pure, there arises a corresponding repression of all that is deemed its opposite: the primal, the chaotic, the selfish, the fearful, the aggressive, and the desirous. This disowned content does not simply vanish. It coalesces into a hidden structure within the unconscious, a twin of the conscious personality that dwells in the subterranean realms of the self. This is the hidden counterpart, the repository of everything the fledgling spiritual identity has sought to deny. The process of awakening, if it is to be more than a fleeting state of inflation, must inevitably turn from this exclusive ascent and begin a perilous descent into these very depths. The end of the awakening is signaled not by a permanent residence in a state of luminous unity, but by the conscious and deliberate engagement with this internal opposition. The individual comes to understand that the profound sense of lack, the recurring patterns of self-sabotage, the inexplicable projections of anger or envy onto others, and the sudden eruptions of raw, unapproved emotion are not distractions from the path. They are the path itself, manifesting as a call from the depths. The universe, or the self, is no longer presenting lessons of light, but lessons of darkness, demanding a journey not upward, but inward. This descent is the essential process of reclamation. It requires a courageous turning towards these disowned fragments, not with the intent to purify or destroy them, but with the willingness to listen, to understand, and ultimately, to welcome them back into the fold of the whole personality. One must confront the inner critic that masquerades as a spiritual voice, the repressed anger that leaks out as passive aggression, the unacknowledged greed that hides behind a facade of false contentment, and the raw, instinctual power that has been locked away for being too potent or dangerous. To face these aspects is to realize they are not monsters, but orphans of the psyche, energies that were split off often in early life for the sake of survival or social acceptance. They are, in their essence, neutral potentials that have been forced into a negative shape through rejection. The act of integration is an alchemical process. It involves holding the tension between the conscious identity, the person who seeks to be good, spiritual, and controlled, and the demands of this inner opposition. It is a dialogue, often felt in meditation, dream work, or active imagination, where the ego must relinquish its sole sovereignty and acknowledge the legitimacy of these other voices. In doing so, a transmutation occurs. The raw energy bound within, for instance, repressed rage, is not expressed as destructive outbursts, but is reclaimed as the vital force of healthy boundaries, assertive action, and the power to say, no. The shadow of selfishness, when integrated, transforms into the capacity for authentic self, care, and the ability to honor one's own needs without guilt. The denied sensuality and primal desire become the fuel for a passionate, embodied engagement with life, rather than a secret shame. This is where the concept of powers finds its true, non-inflated meaning. The abilities that begin to surface at the culmination of the awakening are not supernatural talents bestowed from on high. They are the natural birthright of a psyche that is becoming whole. The power of profound intuition is, in part, the intelligence of the reclaimed instinctual self, no longer silenced. The capacity for deep empathy stems from having made peace with one's own vulnerability and pain within the shadow. The ability to manifest and create in the world draws directly from the raw, unbridled libidinal energy that was once locked away as unacceptable passion. A person who has integrated their shadow does not become a benign, conflict-free saint. They become a person of substance, depth, and authentic power. They possess a groundedness that the purely transcendent seeker lacks, for their spirituality is rooted in the acceptance of their entire being, including the earth from which they grew. Without this integration, the spiritual journey remains lopsided and potentially dangerous. The unintegrated shadow does not disappear. It operates autonomously, sabotaging relationships, creating unforeseen crises, and projecting its qualities onto the external world. The spiritual person who has not faced their own darkness becomes a subtle tyrant, seeing evil only in others, or a fragile vessel easily shattered by the ordinary brutalities of life. Their light is thin and brittle, for it is defined by what it excludes. In contrast, the individual who has undertaken this deep work carries a light that is warm, inclusive, and resilient, a light that has willingly passed through and incorporated the darkness, thereby becoming truly illuminating. This reclamation of the internal opposition is, therefore, the fundamental prerequisite for moving from a state of being acted upon by unconscious forces to a state of conscious, empowered authorship of one's life. It is the transformation of latent potential into active, usable force, turning the fragmented self into an instrument of singular purpose and creative will. The energy once spent on repression and inner civil war is now liberated and available for the tasks of the soul in the world. This marks the crucial transition from preparing the vessel to filling it with purpose, from seeking a truth outside oneself to embodying the truth one has discovered within. The internal alchemy of uniting these opposites creates a stable, dynamic foundation, a true inner marriage that gives birth to the next stage of the journey, which is the external expression of this hard one wholeness. The individual now stands not as a perfect being, but as a complete one, capable of engaging with the world's duality because they have first made peace with their own. The culmination of the profound inner work, the arduous task of reclaiming the fragmented and disowned aspects of the self, inevitably leads to a critical and often unexpected juncture. This is the point where the intensely personal journey of transformation confronts a fundamental and impersonal truth. The process of becoming whole is not, and cannot be, an end in itself. A psyche that has achieved a degree of inner cohesion and self-awareness does not retreat into a state of isolated contentment, contemplating its own perfection like a jewel locked in a vault. Instead, it discovers a new and pressing imperative rising from its very core. A directive that feels as innate and undeniable as the earlier call to seek enlightenment. This is the realization that the state of wholeness, this hard, one individuation, carries with it a sacred debt to the collective, a non-negotiable responsibility to engage with the world from a place of integrated power. The journey inward, having reached its apogee, must now turn outward, and the value of the entire process is ultimately tested not in the serenity of meditation, but in the messy, demanding arena of human existence. This transition marks the shift from being a seeker, a vessel being filled, to becoming a vessel that must now pour itself out. The earlier stages were defined by a necessary selfishness, a focused concentration on healing personal wounds, integrating personal shadows, and understanding personal mythology. This is a legitimate and vital phase, for one cannot give what one does not possess. However, to remain in this phase indefinitely is to betray the deeper purpose of the awakening. The archetypal energy that drives the process of individuation is not a personal possession, it is a universal force that has chosen an individual as its temporary vessel and instrument. To hoard this energy, to bask in the glow of one's own enlightenment, is to create a new and more subtle form of spiritual inflation where the ego, having been dethroned from its central position, now secretly reinstates itself as the proud custodian of a special spiritual status. The universe, or the self, does not produce a fully realized individual simply for that individual's own gratification. It does so to create a functional, conscious node within the larger human network, a point of clarity and creativity that can serve to mend the tears in the collective fabric. The powers that emerge at this stage are thus revealed not as personal trophies, but as specialized tools for this specific work of service. They are the unique, symbolic expressions of an individual's wholeness, shaped by their particular history, their integrated shadows, and their deepest authentic values. For one person, this may manifest as a potent capacity for healing, not as a miraculous laying on of hands, but as the ability to hold a compassionate, non-judgmental space that allows others to confront their own pain. This power is the direct offspring of their having fully integrated their own vulnerability and suffering. For another, the power may be one of visionary leadership, the ability to articulate a compelling future not from a place of egoic ambition, but from a profound connection to the archetypal currents of the time, a capacity born from having navigated and united the warring factions within their own soul. Another may find their power in artistic creation, their work becoming a vessel that makes the unseen realms of the psyche tangible, offering symbols and narratives that can guide and heal the culture. These abilities are genuine and effective precisely because they are not sought after as powers in themselves. They are the organic, emergent properties of a psyche that has achieved a state of dynamic equilibrium. This call to service is therefore the natural completion of the archetypal cycle of the hero's journey. The hero, in myth, ventures into the unknown, confronts the darkness, and wins a treasure. But the myth is very clear. The journey is not complete until the hero returns to the ordinary world to bestow that treasure, the elixir, upon the community. To refuse this return is to remain in a state of alienation, no matter how blissful that state may appear. The integrated individual intuitively understands this. They feel a profound sense of empathy and connection with the struggles of others, not as a sentimental pity, but as a recognition of the same archetypal patterns and battles they have fought within themselves. They see the collective shadow at work in societal injustices, in cultural neuroses, and in environmental exploitation, and they understand that they're hard-won inner stability is now a resource to be deployed against these outer manifestations of inner fragmentation. This is not a call to a grandiose, world-saving mission that inflates the ego. Quite the opposite. It is a call to a humble, focused, and often difficult application of one's specific gifts in the specific corner of the world one inhabits. It is the teacher who, having integrated their own need for recognition, now teaches with a genuine passion for the student's awakening. It is the entrepreneur who, having confronted their own greed, builds a business that serves the genuine well-being of employees and community. It is the parent who, having healed their own inner child, creates a home environment of profound emotional security. The mandate is to become a conduit for the wholeness one has achieved, allowing it to flow into one's relationships, one's work, and one's community, thereby becoming a living antidote to the collective sickness of fragmentation. The ultimate validation of the spiritual awakening is not the peace one feels in solitude, but the healing and creativity one fosters in the world. The process of individuation, therefore, reveals its ultimate purpose. It is the universe's method of creating conscious, responsible agents of its own ongoing evolution, individuals who have been forged in the fires of their own deepest conflicts and returned bearing the capacity to transform the world because they have first allowed the world to transform them. The journey of the chosen one culminates, not in a final, static state of enlightenment, but in a dynamic and purposeful becoming. The 7 signs are the unmistakable indicators that the preparatory phase is complete. You have navigated the depths, reclaimed your shadow, and achieved a hard-won wholeness. This individuation is not for you alone. It is a sacred mandate. The powers you now sense are the unique instruments of your service, born from your integrated self. The time for passive seeking is over. The world in its fragmentation awaits the elixir only you can bring. Heed the call. Step forward with humility and courage. Your true work begins now. It is time to stop preparing your power and start powerfully using it to build, heal, and lead. The sovereign has awakened.